Hi there, this is Srigandasari. So in this lesson, we are going to introduce ourselves to the object-oriented approach and a bit about C++ programming language. Okay. So first we will look into the what are the various object-oriented features and how OOP in short form it is called is going to help us in writing better programs and developing good softwares. Okay. So the first various objectives which we are going to learn today are going to be the various features of object-oriented methodology and various phases used in object-oriented methodology and creating small example classes in C++. Okay. So next move to the next slide here. Okay, so the complexity of a software system. Okay, so what is meant by complexity? So the complexity is nothing but when you are developing a software using a particular programming language. So it should run with the minimum amount of resources and whatever the task you are going to execute should not use the more resources. It should run in a very smaller time. Okay, so C++ is such a good programming language, but when compared to other programming languages like high level languages like Java and other .NET and all, the C++ always uses very less and the complexity of the software system, although the writing the code is very complex in C++, and where the overall product which you are going to give with the C++ or the software product is going to be less complex. Okay, so anyway, the complexity of a software system is divided into two types. The first one is internal complexity, which arises in the composition of a system itself. Okay, so when you are developing the system itself from the scratch, this kind of complexity arises. Okay, so next we have external complexity, which arises from the fact that the users themselves have only a vague idea of how their system works and have difficulty in expressing their requirements. Okay, so this kind of external complexity comes from the user to whom you are going to give your software program. Okay, so excuse me. So the next is going to be the reasons for complexity involved in the development of the software. Okay, so what are the various reasons in a very brief manner? So the difficulty in managing a software development process. Okay, the first one. Okay, the first reason you might think that it is very difficult to manage a software development project or a process. Okay, so very wide number of teams are there, and every individual team is going to perform its own tasks. Like development, there is a separate team, and for testing there is a separate team, and for coding there is a separate team. So when there is a lack of coordination between all these teams, so definitely there will be a problem in managing the software development process. Okay, so another one is going to be the lack of standards for developing the software. Okay, so lack of standards. So every software company or individual who are developing the software should set some high level of standards. Okay, so like level 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So there are so many levels are there, so many methodologies are there like agile, and various development models are there like waterfall, spiral, and rad model, which is very used in these days, a rapid application development model. Okay, okay, so all these things should be kept in mind while developing the softwares. Okay, so these set some standards for developing the software here. Okay, so next we have so difficulty in predicting the software behavior. Okay, so there is always this difficulty arises which leads to some sort of complexity in the software we are going to develop. Okay, so what is the difficulty? You might get a doubt here. Okay, so difficulty is in predicting the software behavior, which means that so how your software is going to work in that particular platform or hardware or a device. So we can predict in all the situations. So user might use your software in a low end system. Okay, so you might develop the software using a particular programming language like C++ or Java or .NET in a high end system. So it might not behave in the same way when it is being installed in a low end system. Okay, excuse me. So that is the another difficult part of predicting the software behavior. Okay, so next we'll move on to So simplifying the complexity. So until now we have just seen how the complexity arises and various kinds of complexities and what are the reasons. So look back. Okay. So reasons for the complexity involved in software development process. So we can simplify that complexity in developing the software systems or software projects is by breaking the system into component parts and arranging them in a hierarchy. This is nothing but in a simple form. We can say that as a modular approach. Okay, so the software, whatever you are going to be developed overall software project or overall software system should be divided into various components and arrange them in such a hierarchy. Okay, so based on the hierarchy of the modules or the components, we need to arrange them in such a way that in a top down approach. Okay, so that we would integrate the individual modules and finally give the end product, which is the software going to be delivered to the user. Okay, so next, the very important thing and very key thing in object oriented approach is an object. Okay, so in a short form or in a simple form, an object is defined as an instance of a class. Okay, so class in an overall, so object oriented approach is nothing but classes and objects. Okay, so if you want to say in a very simpler form, so object is an instance of a class or object is a real world entity. The class is a blueprint. Okay, so class is a blueprint and object is an existing real world existing thing. Okay, so for example, a student is an class. An object can be some whatever the name of the student. Okay, for example, object 1, student 1 is an object. In the same way, an employee is a class. An employee, particular employees like employee 1, employee 2, employee 3, so E1, E2, E3, so on. We are creating for every instance there will be for every instance, for every employee we need to create every instance. For every instance is known as an object here. Okay, so that is the very key thing, object here. Okay, so next, what are the various characteristics of an object? Okay, so every object mainly has three characteristics. Okay, so the first one is a state. The state of an object is indicated by a set of attributes and the values of these attributes. Okay, so every object has a state. So set of attributes is nothing but set of properties. So if you take a student, excuse me, if I take a student, so student has some attributes like roll number, name, like address, email, college name, grades, blood group, so on and so forth. And if we take an employee, so employee has certain attributes such as employee name, employee number, salaries, hire date, joining date, retirement date, and so on and so forth. Several columns of data. If we talk in terms of a database, so several columns of data are available for each and every employee. Okay, so all these set of attributes indicate the state of the object. Okay, so then we have the behavior, another characteristic. Okay, so another characteristic is the behavior. Okay, so what is the behavior is indicated how an object acts and reacts. Okay, so every behavior is stated by the actions and the reactions performed by the object, or you can say, so inside if you're having an object is comprising of set of attributes which is known as a state, and you have a behavior on the operations performed on those attributes or taking those values or taking the values or constants from those objects or sorry attributes and performing some operations. For example, so if you take the basic salary attribute from of an employee and you perform some calculation on that basic salary such that to produce a result of net salary or gross salary. So that kind of characteristics shown by an object is known as behavior. Behavior. Okay. So next we have identity. Identity. Okay. So what is an identity? You mean that distinguishes the objects from all other objects. Okay. So identity is such a characteristic which defines the objects from all other objects. So that is another important characteristics of an object. Okay, so next we have so classes. So just now we have studied about what is an object here. So next we have what is a class. Okay, so class is nothing but a blueprint. Okay, So defines the attributes and behavior. So the class in a short form, it is a very example of an important object oriented feature known as encapsulation. Known as encapsulation. So class is considered as a blueprint. So for example, if you are constructing any house or something like that, so first we need to have a blueprint of whatever we are going to construct. Okay, so where the bedrooms are going to be, or where the bathrooms are going to be, and something in that scenario. So first we need to sketch the figure or outline or a plan or something like that. Okay, so in the same way, the classes replicate the blueprint, or it's nothing but a collection or encapsulation of attributes and behavior. Okay, so we have studied about one of the two key characteristics of an object. The first one is set of attributes, and the second one is behaviors. Okay, so the combination of both of those characteristics combined together into a single unit, or encapsulating the member data and member functions into a single unit, is known as a class. Okay, so for example, if you take a student class, or in this example we have here a birds class. Okay, so birds is a overall class at the higher level, and the types of it can be classified into a peacock or a sparrow or a kingfisher or something like that. Okay, so it can be classified, and further, and peacock has its own, and the overall all the birds have some common features. So all the birds have some common features, and the peacock in turn have some common features within that, and sparrow will have some common features. Okay, so in that case, so we need to organize the structure of the software in the form of classes, or modularize the program or the components into classes, and then we need to integrate or intercommunicate between the classes by passing the data between them, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it helps us in developing a better software. Okay, so next we are going to look into the messages and methods. Okay, so first we will see what are the messages. Okay, so messages are nothing but the data transmitted by one object to the another. Okay, so the transmission of data between the objects. Okay, so between the objects and the classes and the methods inside the classes is known as messages. This is another important OOPS feature known as message passing. Okay, so it's a key thing. Another important feature is message passing. Okay, so all the transmissions are taken as a request for an action to be taken. Okay, so all the transmissions, or all the data to be transmitted, are taken as a request, and all are accompanied by an additional information needed to carry out the request. Okay, so whatever, if you are passing the object by value or by reference or by address, so all those additional information, whatever the variables or data or arguments you are passing between the member functions or between the objects of two classes using the friend function, so all these things need some additional information accompanied with the requests. Okay, okay, so that's all about the message passing technique. And then we have methods. Okay, so what is a method? So method is a set of actions taken by the receiver object in response to the request. Okay, so method or an event in a when you are writing the event driven programs, so in that case we will say an action. Okay, so method there, a method is an action. So if you are clicking a button, and some kind of action uh, beneath that button, some kind of action should be performed. Okay, so in the same way we have methods here. So here our methods means our member functions which perform some operations on the member data or attributes. Okay, so here in that scenario we need to think in our object oriented approach. Okay, so next we have the benefits of object oriented approach. So what are the various benefits? What object oriented gives you added advantage when compared to the structure oriented or procedure oriented programming language? Okay, so first one is a realistic modeling. It's very easy to develop the programs based on the objects rather than using the functions and function calls and go to statements, which were widely used in the procedure oriented approach. Okay, so all these hurdles were being removed in the object oriented approach, and it's very easy to develop the programs in a realistic way. Okay, so next, another important feature of object oriented approach is reusability. Okay, so reusability saves the time and cost of development. Okay, so if we have a component already developed, you can reuse that component and add some extra features and reproduce into a new component, and which in turn can be usable by another classes. Okay, so that is the one of the key feature of object oriented approach. Okay, so next we have benefits of object oriented approach. So another benefit, important benefit, is resilience to the change. Okay, so object oriented systems or softwares which we are going to develop using the object oriented systems were very resilient to change, which means that they are very easy to maintain, and the parts of the system can be redefined without any major change in other parts. Okay, so if you want, for example, if you are dealing with a new project came in forward, so you can look back into the already existing projects which were developed using the object oriented approach, and you can redefine that project and recreate a new project without changing the much things. Okay, so minor changes, with the minor changes you can reproduce the same software. Okay, so that's what it means as resilience to change. Okay, so another important thing is object-oriented programming is analysis phase. Okay, so object-oriented analysis. So object-oriented analysis and design. So this is another buzzword which is taking place in the industry. So object-oriented development needs object-oriented analysis. Okay, so it's carried out mainly in three steps. The first phase, where the users and developers arrive together at a common understanding of the system. Okay, so users, the first phase is users. So whoever you are going to deliver the software, and the developers are sitting into a common arena and understanding the system with both the mindsets. Okay, so another, there is a one important phase carried out in the analysis part of the object oriented approach. Okay, so next one requires the developer to concentrate on obtaining the maximum possible information about the problem domain. Okay, so developer, whoever is going to develop the system based on the user requirements, has to acquire or obtain the maximum possible information about the domain in which means that whatever the platform he is going to use to develop the software system. Okay, so if a domain can be a .NET domain, or a Java domain, or a web domain, or a desktop domain, or a mobile domain, so whatever it can be. So the user should develop or gather the maximum possible information in which he is going to develop the software system application. Okay, so the third phase is going to be the result phase. Okay, the results in one of the end products as specification of the function of the system. Okay, the result speaks for themselves. So this is the one word you can define this phase in the object oriented analysis. Okay, the results is one of the end product as the specifications of the function of the system. Okay, so results should be predefined and pre-predicted, and then only you need to put in the analysis phase and give it to the user. Okay, so next we are looking into the what is an object oriented design, OOD. So as soon as you analyze the object oriented system using the object oriented analysis phases, so you need to give some design to the user. Okay, so in this is carried out in mainly in two ways. Okay, so first one, it generates the blueprint of the system that has to be implemented. So here blueprint is nothing but development of the classes. Okay, so classes, we need to implement the problem specification with regard to the various classes which you are going to develop inside the coding part of the development phase. Okay, so next we have involves in the identifying classes. Okay, using abort techniques. Okay, so blueprint is nothing but itself gives the idea of developing the classes or identifying the classes. So both are evolved into a single unit here using the object oriented design. Okay, so next technique, aborts technique. Let's list the following steps here. Okay, so there is a specific technique known as aborts technique. So write the English description of the problem, underline the nouns. The nouns represent the candidate classes. Okay, so it's very obvious, quite obvious that all the classes we are going to develop inside our software project or development phase are obviously going to be the nouns. Okay, so the classes which you are going to develop, it can be a student class which is a noun, it can be a car class, it can be a plane class, it can be a ship, whatever it might be. So obviously whatever the nouns, if you write the description of the object oriented system, if you keep on underlining the nouns whatever you are going to encounter, and then we need to represent those nouns in the form of classes. Okay, so classes, and then we need to start creating the objects or instances of that classes. Okay, so next we look into the what is OOP. So now we had enough with the object oriented analysis part, object oriented design part. So what are the various components of the characteristics of the object oriented approach, and now the real terminology of object oriented programming. Okay, so it is a way of writing programs, it is a programming paradigm. Okay, so what is meant by OOP? It's a programming approach, it's a way of writing programs, or you can say it's a programming paradigm. Okay, so like how we have an paradigm for procedure oriented programming or structure oriented programming in olden languages like C. Okay, so we have object oriented approach, which is a new thing, came out in the late 80s and early 90s, and very very hugely popular and still being implemented in many programming languages. Okay, so if you take Java or C Sharp or whatever the highly popular programming languages in the world, so all follow the only approach known as object oriented approach. Okay, so what are the various applications built into the OOP technique? Okay, so if you think what are the various applications or where the OOP can be applied in the industry or in the computer science streams, you can take the CAD design, the very first one, computer aided design. It's like all your so CAD softwares like AutoCAD and so on and so forth, all were designed using the OOP approach only. And then we have computer aided manufacturing also, CAM. Okay, so computing manufacturing used in industries, high level industries like automobile and airline industries and so on and so forth. And we have artificial intelligence, so like robotics and all expert systems all use object oriented programming approach. And then we have object oriented databases, which is very quite popular in the database world also. So if you take Oracle or any high end database, so they are all object related, so object oriented relational database management systems. Okay, OORDBMS. So Oracle and high end databases are no more RDBMS, they are now called as object oriented relational database management systems. Okay, so then we have another classification of computer languages and how this object-oriented programming can be classified in what kind of generations. Okay, so as we know that the generations of computer programming languages are three kinds mainly: the first generation, second generation, and the third generation. Okay, so next we will continue our studies on the evolution of the C++ programming language. So it's very obvious that C++ programming language is developed in the year exactly, if you want to know, it's 83 by Bjarne Stroustrup. Okay, so he is the one scientist who, as a part of his research project, started creating a programming language which he named later as C++. The original name given to the C++ programming language is C with classes. Okay, so it is the original name given to the C++ programming language. Okay, so once again, it's developed in the year 1983 by Bjarne Stroustrup. The original name given to the C++ programming language is nothing but C with classes. Okay, so this is the simplest possible class in C++. Okay, so so now until now we are talking about the classes and objects and so on and so forth. So this is the very small example of a car class. Okay, so here if you take the definition, so just a class is a keyword in C++ and followed by the name of the class, and then we have a public. Here it is known as an access specifier. Okay, so what is an access specifier? So we will learn in the future lessons. Okay, so access specifier is nothing but it specifies the scope of the members. Okay, so whether they are accessible within the class or outside the class and so on and so forth. And we have here one member function which is defined as honk here, which just a purpose or sole purpose of that member function is to just print the message beep beep. Okay, to the output screen. Okay, so this is a very small example, and the class closing should be followed by always followed by the semicolon here. Okay, so parenthesis open close, and methods parenthesis open and close. Okay, so next we have so just we are studying about the class, how we have created that class example. So we have used the class keyword and followed by the class name and so on and so forth. Okay, so conventions, whatever the variable naming conventions applied for defining an identifier in C++ are all applicable for naming the classes also, but there are some important rules which should be kept in mind before defining the names of the classes. Okay, so first one, the conventions which should be kept in mind, or it should be meaningful. Okay, we should never give the class names as class A, class B, class C, something like that. Never give. So if you are developing a program for car, you should give the class name as class car. And if you are developing a program for student, give the class name as student. Okay, so that's what the second point says here. There should be ideally a noun. Okay, the class name should always be a noun. Noun. Okay, it should never be a something simple word. Okay, and the first level, first letter. Okay, the first letter of every word should be in the upper case. Okay, followed by the consecutive words in the smaller cases. Okay, so this is a very important convention should be kept in mind while defining the names of the classes. Okay, so next the rules are there. Okay, so there are certain specific rules are there. So all these rules are quite common if you know the rules of the how to define an identifier or a variable in C++. So those things apply here also. Okay, the first one, it should begin with a letter, may be followed by a sequence of letters or digits. Okay, the first important rule should never begin with a digit. Okay, so if you are beginning with a digit other than letter, it will automatically obviously throw an error. Okay, and it should not contain any keywords, which is quite obvious, and keywords are the some have some specific meaning set aside. Okay, so we need not use any keywords like for, while, and do, and switch, and if we should not never be used in the class names. Okay, so and also we have should not contain any spaces or symbols in between the class names. Okay, so this is very important thing. So these are the various rules for naming the classes, and also we have the various conventions should be followed. Okay, so conventions are not mandatory. Okay, it's a good thing. The worldwide programmers have set some standards. Okay, so if we need to write good programs, we need to follow those conventions only. Okay, so next we have in the previous example we have seen what is a small function written inside the class here. Okay, so this part, so this is the member function. Okay, so member function, which means that passing messages and responding to them. Okay, so member functions are declared inside the body of the class. In a small definition, you can say what is a member function if anyone is asking you. A function which is defined inside the class is known as a member function. Okay, so normal functions are different from the member functions. They lie within the scope of the or the object of the class. Okay, so they are only accessible with the object of the class. We cannot access the member functions directly. Okay, so these are the very differences between the normal functions and the member functions. Okay, so here in our example, the honk is the member function. Member function. Okay, so next we have so what are the various mainly needed object. Okay, so for example, if you take cout as an object predefined in the class ostream. Okay, so we know that we look into the simplest possible C++ program in the next lesson. Okay, so and then we have an endl manipulator which is equivalent to the slash n in the C++. Okay, so if we took just we have seen this because of so here we have taken the cout statement. Okay, cout statement is nothing but is equivalent to the printf statement in the C programming language. Okay, so the sole purpose of the cout statement is to just output whatever the string given in those quotations to the standard output device like monitor. Okay, so it is the sole purpose of the cout statement. And we have endl statement here. Endl statement is nothing but it's equivalent to the slash n new line character. Okay, the cursor is automatically taken to the next line. Okay, so here we have the complete example of the customer class here. Okay, so void accept and void display. So here the void accept the customer details, accepting the customer details or whatever the taking the input from the keyboard or whatever the tasks related to that, accepting the data from the user can be put inside this member function, and whatever the data you are going to display or end results can be put in the display function. Display function. Okay, so this is another small example of a complete class. Okay, So this is a summary. So if you look into the summary, whatever we have learned until now, so we have learned about the various complexities occur in the software development system. It's mainly because of the difficulty in understanding of the software systems and complexities. Okay, so lack of communication and lack of standards for developing the software, and predicting the software behavior, and difficulty in predicting the software behavior. Okay, so reusability. What are the benefits of object-oriented system? Okay, so it's realistic modeling, reusability of the code, resilience to the change. Okay, so those are the very important summary which we have taken here. Okay, so here if you take about the example we are taking, study about the example, the class cout, the class ostream is associated with the output device. Okay, so here just we have taken the cout. So what is the duty of cout? Is just to take the string inside the quotations and put it into the output screen in the example you have taken. So this less than operator here is used to just to direct the output or the string to the standard output device. It's also known as insertion operator. Okay, so if you use that operator in the reverse direction, greater than with the combination of scene object, then that is known as extraction operator, taking the data from the user. The sole purpose of the scene object is to take the data from the user, and the sole purpose of the cout object is to take the give output to the stand output screen. Okay, so that's what we have seen until now. So this is all about the introduction to the object-oriented approach and object-oriented advantage of using the object-oriented system, and introduction to just a small introduction to C++ language and small program using the classes and objects and so on and so forth. So hope this lecture helped you. So put your valuable feedback in the form of comments and give a thumbs up if you like it. Okay. So see you in the next lesson. Goodbye.